So this panel is actually, it's titled Advice, Lessons Learned and the Future for Training Deployment. We've got some real experts from various sides of the equation actually, but they've all got, the common thread is they've all got experience about rolling out widely. So we've got Sebastian there. Welcome, Sebastian.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hey, how are you?
You too. Thanks. Welcome.
Very good. Nice to see you, Daniel.
And welcome, Jennifer. Jennifer, how's it going?
Doing well. Great to be here.
Right. I'm going to very quickly, just for the sake of protocol, read your bios out if you don't mind, guys, just so the audience know your background, and then we'll kick off properly. So here we go. Excuse me for this, Jennifer. Jennifer's an experienced learning executive with demonstrated history of strategic workforce transformation and capability development. Her specialization is in complex, global, high-risk, high-compliance industries. She's passionate about leading cutting-edge innovation in the learning space with particular attention to learning in the flow of work. Currently, Jennifer holds the position of Head of Learning at Angloamerican. And we have Sebastian Scheler. Sebastian's a psychologist and a professional trainer. As CEO and lead psychologist at Innerspace, the deep training company, Sebastian's responsible for company management, the business area of sales, the implementation of deep training products in the pharmaceutical industry as well. As an expert in training transfer and human error analysis, he's also a speaker at various specialist events. And last but not least in the panel here, we've got Daniel Seidl. So Daniel is the founder and CEO of Innoactive, Munich-based startup, for those who don't know, on a mission to scale enterprise for VR. His entrepreneurial journey started during his studies at the Technical University of Munich, and since 2013, Daniel and the team have delivered more than 100 VR and AR software proof of concepts, pilots, and rollouts for companies across multiple industries. And today they focus on establishing Innoactive's open and modular VR training platform, working with companies such as Volkswagen, Linde, BSH, Fraport, Munich Airport, and others as well. So welcome to the panel, guys. So I was going to give you all a minute just to quickly, I know I've done a bit of a bio there and so on, but I was going to give you a minute just to quickly say a bit of a hello from your side also, and what's your sort of special VR training. So in the order we started there probably, so Jennifer, maybe just a very quick one from your background there.
Sure. Yeah. Good day, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here today with such honored panelists to speak about such a topic that is near and dear to my heart. As Graham kind of introduced already, my background is primarily in high-risk, high-compliance organizations. I've been on both the client and the solution provider and consulting side throughout my career, and have worked in industries such as oil and gas, aviation, mining, etc. I'm really, really passionate about the ways in which we develop our workforce proactively ahead of the change that's coming, and I firmly believe that XR is a big part of the ways in which we do that. So pleased to be here today.
Thanks. Welcome, Jennifer. Yourself, Sebastian?
Yeah, thank you, Graham. I'm also very happy to be here. Just a quick word about Innerspace. We are developing and delivering end-to-end virtual reality training solutions to enable clean room operators and other operators in the pharmaceutical companies or pharmaceutical world to master key moments and bring a new layer of quality to their work. We as Innerspace see us as experts both in the field of the pharmaceutical industry and the development of virtual reality trainings combined with our psychological background. We have the mission really to make a footprint here in this industry and to define and the standard how VR training can be as impactful as possible.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sebastian. And finally, Daniel, any quick words from your side, just to quickly say hello to those who don't know you?
Yeah, I will just say quickly, thank you for joining, guys. So I'm kind of one of the hosts here, so it's great to see that you are back again here. And just to say a bit about from my side, so my passion is to connecting people and to like letting them achieve something great together. So this is also why this fits great with these kinds of events we are doing. And my profession somehow is to do this within our organization, so our startup Innoactive, which is obviously the mission to develop great technology, which is helping to make this rollouts happen of VR training and make this change happen, what is then possible with it.
Thanks, Daniel. So I'm going to open up with, in the we talk a lot about how the world of virtual reality has evolved, and it's kind of moved from proof of concept into wider scaling. But it'd be interesting to understand, actually, from your experience, how mature are industries and various companies so far? And are you seeing sort of large variations between different ones there? Sort of who's moving on well, or if any examples you've got, would be great to hear. Jennifer?
Sure. Yeah, no, I do think that organizations and enterprises are in different places, different areas of maturity with regards to the space. And I base that just upon the work that I've done in several different industries and with some great organizations along the way. I think there's a great interest in the technology and the experience and the ways in which we start to get that in the hands of our colleagues across the globe. Organizations, I think, are in a different place with regards to where they are in that journey. Are they starting to experiment and look into the space? Are they starting to pilot, I think, which was one of the topics from yesterday, different experiences within their organization? And or are they really at a place in which they can deploy at scale XR across the organization, and importantly, bring back meaningful metrics and ROI associated with the investment decisions that they're making? And I do think that different organizations are in different places along that journey. I think as we start to go through this conversation here today, we'll talk a little bit more about some of the aspects that get organizations a little bit closer to being able to scale. But it's a journey that we're all on. I don't think that anybody would say that they've scaled to the level at which they want to scale in the long term. So we're all just learning and growing from each other, I think, and collaborating a lot along the way with regards to best practices and lessons learned.
How about you, Sebastian? Are you seeing any of your customers sort of slightly further along that curve? So really looking at wider rollout and scaling?
Yeah, I think it could be helpful to differentiate, at least within our industry, life science industry, within three kinds of customer stages where I can see what could be the case. So the first one is that they are basically interested, but they do not know exactly what the specific benefits and the specific use case for them is in order to start, because normally they need a clear use case really to show to their whole corporation that this could make sense. So therefore, we as an industry for supplying or for developing virtual reality based trainings do have the mission, I think, to give them tools and methods in order to get a clearer picture on how benefit could be created fast. So this is the first sector, the first group of companies. The second are those which have had some experiences with pilots in the space, and those pilots can both be positive and negative. So we did have experience with companies who told us, hey, yeah, we tried out some virtual reality or augmented reality stuff, but we do not have so much confidence in it, and we did not have the results, etc., etc. So for those kind of group, it's important to understand more the factors from which the impact of the training is dependent. And this is not only talking about about developing a virtual reality-based training. It is also about specifying the right content and also about implementing it correctly within the organization. So this is the second group. And the third, very small group are companies which already have successful pilots in place where they can see quantified benefits. And what they want to have is some kind of scaling or rollout model which allows them to really implement it at their different sites. So this group needs more about an idea what the specific obstacles are in order to implement it correctly. That's the first point. And the second point is really to think about what is the content which is able to scale. You know, normally within our industry, we have a huge amount of possible content. And from a learning perspective, not every content is as effective or as important as another possible content. So it's not only about creating content, it's about helping the customers to create the right content, because normally they do have the issue that training time is something very valuable for them, because training time is always the time what you are not in production for instance. So this third kind of group needs some kind of help in order to really focus on the right content to make a success story out of it. So basically these are the three groups of companies we are confronted with.
Yeah,
great. What's been your experience so far, Daniel?
I can't add anything else. So I see all of these. We see these three stages, and obviously for today, the last stage is the target audience, or everyone who wants to see what challenges are in this third stage. And I recently spoke to Gartner about the XR adoption in enterprises, and they said that there's only 1% of companies out there who are using XR technologies already, and using could be already defined of just doing a pilot. So it's very, very little. And so this confirms that this last group is very small, and they call it, by the way, embryonic stage. So it's very small. But the technology obviously is considered to be truly transformational. So it's just that's as extrapolated this going to be a larger target audience over time. So it's just the question is how fast this third stage is going to evolve. And obviously it's our mission to speed this up. So that's why we're doing this everything. And then there was this, I think all of you know this PwC study, not the recent ones with the soft skill training, but the older one from earlier, I think last year, like this year, with the global impact of XR technology on the economy. And we did some calculations. They have this fancy calculator on the website where you can see in which year how big the impact is and so on. So, and we wanted to find out how fast this group will grow, right? And we did some calculation with these figures, and we calculated from these numbers that the global impact of VR training specifically is going to be like, according to the estimation, like $90 billion US dollars. So the increase of the GDP of the world actually is going to be like more than $90 billion in 2030. So I hope that this is then driving forward the change. So the third group is going to increase.
100%. Sebastian began sort of touching on the topic a bit actually, but what sort of barriers do you see to us reaching there at the moment? Barriers is probably the wrong word. Challenges is maybe a better one. What challenges do you see, and which of them are kind of just logical ones that will be solved by the tech improving generally, and we will see that coming with Moore's Law, and which are the ones that need specifically extra focus from those of us involved here, for example, in the summit? Jennifer, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so there are the obvious technical challenges that we all still face in some industries more than others around infrastructure and just basic accessibility and all of those kinds of things. I do think that those are things that we're looking to solve. Our current environment has emphasized more than ever the need to invest in reliable infrastructure to reach our colleagues. So I think that's a challenge ahead of us that we know what to do with. With regards to the other pieces that I think are really important to think about, they have to do with the ways in which experiences and content are organized across different organizations. The taxonomy or classification of experiences and content that organizations have, and the maturity around that taxonomy, because it drives a lot with regards to the experiences that we're making available for people. So I think that's a big piece. And then another challenge is really just really identifying beyond the use case that Sebastian talked about even further, the risk profiles associated with different types of work that lend themselves really well to a use case around deploying VR as a learning strategy. And then furthermore, really identifying the behaviors that we're looking to see from our colleagues in the experience, going way beyond did they complete it or not, to did we actually change behavior. And I think organizations have a little ways to go in many cases with regards to clarifying their taxonomy, clarifying the contexts where VR needs to be deployed, and then really getting crystal clear with regards to what behaviors we're looking to see from our colleagues while they're in the experience. When we can get all of those things lined up, we're in a great position to really utilize the technology in a meaningful way to scale and to really bring back meaningful data that indicates whether or not an XR modality has accelerated development and accelerated competency, because that's really the piece that we're looking to see, is that reduced time to competency and acceleration of capability development.
It's really interesting, actually, you bring up the behavioral change element there, because if we take a kind of a step back from the coalface of what we're working on, that is the goal here. That's what organizations are looking at doing. So, Sebastian, you were talking about some of the challenges that you're seeing a second ago, but are there any that you kind of didn't cover off there you'd sort of like to highlight that are sort of need the urgent attention in the area?
Sorry, I didn't get it. Can you please tell it again? I had a sound problem. Yeah.
Sorry. It was about the challenges you see in order to scaling, and which of them are the most difficult to overcome.
There are different kind of challenges, but I want to say something on top of what Jennifer was saying, because I think it's very important. When we see it from the ultimate goal to really change behavior in a sustainable way, then I think one of the basic challenges when we see it from a psychological point of view, and training is a psychological question, that there are different levels of training transfer effectiveness or training impact. A training impact is not only dependent on the technology or the training design itself, it also is dependent on how this training is able to be implemented within an organization. There are different kind of factors what we have to focus here also. And what is important to see is that virtual reality as a technology is always consisting or is always giving a opportunity, and is also relying on different kind of factors what we have to be very aware on, not to have false expectations within it. So it could be the possibility that you have a great training design in VR, for example, but you have a lack of a degree of implementation, and then you do not have training impact. Because then the kind of employees, or in our case, the cleanroom operators, are not able to really get the most important things out of the training, and are able to implement it within their actual work environment. So when we talk about behavioral change, then we have to see that there is the factor of really identifying the right content also on the company level, but also on the individual level. We have to see about what kind of factors we have to take into consideration, talking about training design. That's more from the creator perspective. And the last thing is that we have to be very aware on that the company itself has to have really overcome some kind of obstacles which could in negative way affect the training impact of a solution. And we as providers or as a community have to see this in a broader kind of calculation, how training impact can be given to the industry, not only dependent on the technology itself. So this is the base when we talk about obstacles, to have the same understanding, the same logic, how training impact can be generated and what kind of parts is the supplier responsible and what kind of parts is more in the hands of the organization, of course, with helping from the supplier side professionally to overcome this obstacle. So this is what I want to say in the first place, Yeah.
Okay. And Daniel, anything to add to that?
So Sebastian, so the collaboration between the supplier and the customer or the large enterprise, I think this is has been an issue for all projects I have seen in my history.
Absolutely.
Not that it's like, but that it's the worst thing, but it's just a big challenge to solve. And I think it's about finding a win-win situation between these players. And now when software vendors or startups come into the game, and then there are system integrators and internal departments and everything. There's so many stakeholders involved, and to finding a win-win-win-win for all these people is quite difficult. But if you reduce this to the software vendors, the system integrators, and the customers, I think it can be found. And what we want to contribute there is the two biggest challenges are creating the content basically, and then being able to make them usable across the different locations of the corporate locations, because this is then the basic drivers of the business case. So return on invest comes if the content is being developed with a reasonable amount of invest, and if it can be changed and maintained and so on. So you effectively and efficiently can create the content, but then also make it usable for the people out there.
But I would add two other factors, honestly. I would add two other factors. So the first is the specification of the content. As I said beforehand, the biggest problem is that, at least within our industry, that you have very limited time for training. And normally when we talk about our operators, they have the most critical job, what is existing within this kind of field. So with this little amount of time, what actually has to be trained in order to avoid human errors sustainably? And we are so we have built up an own method to analyze the root causes of human errors, for example, because of this problem. So it is not only a topic about creating content. It is really a topic about understanding the root causes and why human beings are making errors. And in our kind of perspective, the industry does have a good understanding what kind of errors exist, but not explicitly what the root causes of these human errors are. So this is the additionally to the 2 points what you have mentioned, one of these. And the fourth point for me is that within the normal workday of the environment, they do have already, normally all of the corporates do have some kind of training programs, some kind of curricula, etc., and really to implement it in a way which fits perfectly to the normal production life and procedure is also normally a hindrance. So when we, for example, talking about one of our customers, unfortunately, I'm not allowed to name it, but this corporate has sites for production from California to Japan, and they all have this kind of very regulated, very critical production environment. and they do have so much kind of procedures. And what is absolutely necessary within this case is to help them to integrate a training step by step, that they can take it as a normal part of their production life. So additionally to the 2 points what you have mentioned, I think in our point of view, those additional 2 points are also important to really get straight benefits out of it.
I like it. That's a good extension. So Jennifer, I have a question to you actually, because of the first point mentioned by Sebastian about specification of content. So obviously the normal approach is to specify something and then give it to a developer and get it developed. What we have seen in our biggest customer, Volkswagen Group, is that they have a lot to specify because they have a lot of working procedures and so on. So really, like specifying into an Excel file or whatever and then shipping to the developers is not the right approach. So have you, in your industry, did you think it would be great if the specification was not necessary actually? So if you have like all these SOPs in your systems, I think we had a talk about this recently at some event,
right,
to give the subject matter expert or someone the possibility to just define the content and let the partner company or the developer just focus on developing the piece around the actual learning content?
Absolutely. And speaking from being, running large learning organizations in high risk, high compliance, large enterprises, I think that's critical, Daniel. And we have talked a lot about that in the sense that we really need to single source content from the original SOP into all of the different modalities with which people experience it, whether that be in a training scenario or whether that be, in full heads-up display, AR technology in the flow of work. We cannot have disconnects between the SOP itself and the actual experiences that we're making available for people. Not only because it's confusing, but also because, once again, we're held to certain standards within our industries and our organizations, and even to comply with ISO audits and things of that nature, we have to make sure that the version of an SOP is the same across any experience type that an individual comes across, whether that's the SOP in documentation form, whether that's in a VR scenario, whether it's in an AR scenario, whether it's simply in a piece of e-learning. It really doesn't matter. It has to be consistent and it has to be updated and version controlled, all from one place. Otherwise, we can't scale, and we get into dangerous situations where we have certain experience types that are not connected to others, so they don't get updated at the same time and with the same cycle, which puts all of our colleagues at risk. So I think there's a huge point there around ensuring that we aren't rebuilding content. We're sourcing it from the actual SOP and then making sure if there are updates there that it perpetuates into the experience. So I think that's a huge piece. The other piece that's obviously really important is making sure that whatever behaviors we're tracking within those experiences are also aligned and kept up to date as well, so that we're getting really meaningful data back with regards to, once again, if we're changing behavior and the ways in which we're changing behavior in different modalities and even in different experiences. This obviously applies even in different pieces of VR. If we have different partners that are working on different projects, once again, we don't want them all recreating content because then it gets disconnected in different packages, and we need to make sure that they're tracking behaviors in the same way, so that we can actually look at those in aggregate across the organization with regards to the impact that's taking place.
Great.
Maybe Graham, am I allowed to add something here?
Yeah, please go for it, Sebastian.
Thank you. So this SOP topic, especially when we're talking about the regulated industry, Jennifer, and I'm in the pharmaceutical world, so it couldn't be more regulated. So I'm very well aware. I just want to give a additional perspective on it. When we talk about a SOP, then normally a SOP is a description of a how to do procedure, more or less, you know, and what kind of things have to be involved, what kind of things have to be done in which way. So what normally SOP is lacking is a clear definition of what kind of errors can take place within this procedure, and what kind of factors could lead to problems within the production. So normally when we talk to customers, then we combine this SOP compliance procedure that we really want to look through what kind of things are compliant to the regulatory standards, with an additional perspective on the human errors that can occur. And this is very important when we talk about designing VR training, you know, because beside the presence effect, when we talk about experience based and making this kind of having this kind of presence, the most important thing is that the trainee or the operator does get the right feedback at the right time. So we have to be very aware of this kind. What are the errors which could take place? So I make us example. So within our industry, people are working in sterile environments where they have to follow certain SOPs, and when they do this, then this intervention or this action is completed. But you can follow certain SOPs and make mistakes. So you can do it right with doing it wrong. And when we as a supplier wouldn't have integrated a feedback mechanism, what really gives you the feedback that this is wrong, exactly, that this is wrong, this could lead to a non-compliant behavior, because a compliant SOP is not equal to a compliant behavior. And normally people are not very aware of the same fact that what do they have to do right and what do they have to avoid in order not to be wrong. So this, what I mean with specification, is the most important thing, to really look through what kind of things are not written down in the SOP but are very important to behave correctly. You know, and this is the thing what we saw within our creation of training units, that we haven't done it at the very beginning of Innerspace, and then we got into the situation that our customers called you and said, yeah, your training units are great, but these are the mistakes, and the system is not telling the operator that this is wrong. You know, this is the tricky part of it, that you really have this understanding that you really get the system to a point where the feedback is accurate and specific in order to enhance the compliant behavior.
So the key thing there, by the sounds of it, design very well from the get-go, from the very start.
Yeah, but you know, when you have the regulatories in house, so for example, in our case, health authorities also, you know, they are not only seeing is there a SOP compliance in any areas, but I don't know within the other industries, Jennifer, but they are looking through the production areas, and they look to the people who are working at the filling lines in our case, for example, and they're looking through, do they behave correctly? And to understand this kind of correct behavior, we have to be very aware of what kind of errors could be made, what are the root causes, and those kind of things are not normally written down in the SOP. So this is a field where some kind of expertise has to go in order to create then a training which has the capacity to feedback all the relevant things. That's what I want to add, yeah.
Okay, then let me just ask a question. Sorry, Graham, this is so exciting. Because we have two experts talking about SOPs here, and in a similar industry, which is dependent on these SOPs. So, but the general, from our technology vendor perspective, the idea of separating the learning content, so the SOP may be enriched with errors from the actual implementation. I think this is a message to the developers out there, right? So, if you're developing via training content, you have to think about separating the training content, the learning content, from the actual implementation
experience.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's a big piece. And I'll echo everything that Sebastian says. You know, it's one of the most interesting things that I see in the space. One, we need continuity of the content itself, so the SOP shouldn't be different, right, across the interaction. But additionally, we need to be tracking the right behaviors and making sure that we're we're looking at upstream process safety and all of the barriers that human beings need to interact with or perform behaviors around to make sure that we're safe, right? So we have many barriers, and any barrier can fail at any given moment. And then what do you do? So that's essentially what Sebastian's talking about. The interesting thing is that our organizations have these, right? If you talk to your safety professionals within your organization, sustainability and safety, as well as our colleagues in operational excellence, they have these things defined. Where we don't have the maturity necessarily in organizations at this point, where we need to get to is making sure that those are consistently provided to the partner that's producing the experience, to make sure that those things are embedded on top of the SOP appropriately. For example, I've spent quite a bit of time and effort working on specific SDKs to make it very apparent to providers that are partnering with me exactly what we need to see and track, and what experiences and contexts need to be present regardless of the or the particular package or interaction, to make sure that we are introducing those contexts, we are introducing those risks, and we are giving people the ability to take decisions and branch in different ways based upon the environment around them, because that's critical, particularly in a VR setting.
Cool, thanks, Jennifer. We are almost running tight on time now. We're going to be doing a bit of networking after this, because I'd like people to have a chance actually to talk to you guys one-on-one as well, and share their specific questions. But if there are any questions from the audience, you guys have about 20-30 seconds to type them in now, and we can maybe throw one from the audience into the panel. But in the meantime, this is a really good opportunity for everyone in the networking session we're going to hold shortly to actually understand some proper in-depth knowledge from people who have lived through those challenges. So just double checking to see if we've got any questions in from the audience. Okay, first mover advantage, Justin. So Justin asked, related to this discussion on unspoken requirements for the SOP, beside the desired engineering content design, how do you ensure you capture the desired UX experience? Let's open up with yourself, Sebastian.
How we ensure the right UX experience. Is this correct, the question?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think what is most crucial is that you have a very well feedback or test loop with your customers, in order to see if that what you have intended to train has had the same effect what you have intended. I don't know the English word exactly. So normally, you do have so many ideas on how to integrate a idea in the UX design, for example, that you have to be very aware of, that it has to come through within the experience, that what you have intended to train in terms of the right understanding or the right behavior has changed in some way. So one example is that you make some kind of user testing. So we do have a tool where we all over the world can be with our customers who are training with our new units, and we really asking them about their experience. This is the first thing, and the second, I think, more important thing is that we always that you always have to see we are building training units and exam units, and normally the exam unit should give some kind of idea about if the training unit works, in terms of if the person has understood it or can do it then correctly. So these are the two things what I see, and yeah, we're doing many testings to improve in this area.
And Daniel, how about from your side? How would you ensure you're capturing the desired UX experiences?
Well, as you know, we are not developing the experiences on our own, so we share our technology. So for the Unity SDK, we create a toolkit for others to develop the content. And what we do is we figured out that obviously if you have to solve UX for every training simulation separately, the effort is very high. So let's assume, Sebastian, you have figured out how to do the implementation with a resulting UX for some specific interaction. You want to like freeze this and reuse it every time if you can reuse it, if it's able to be reused. And that's what we take into the architectural design of our product. So you can develop a behavior or a condition and the corresponding UX in the application, and then reuse this across applications if this is applicable. So this is one key element, because UX is very expensive to achieve a good UX, and as I now today learned, also a UX which is, let's say, compliant with the content. So you need to make sure that this is actually delivering the learning experience, not only from a pleasure of use, but also from.
I think it's very important that also when we talk about all this SOPs, so normally you have so many possibilities and so many possible content, so you have to be very careful about what is the center of the experience. So what are the minimal features that what you're very good in, that the operator can go out and say, okay, these are the two free things what really dived in my mind. So we are always thinking about, that's why we talk about our products as deep training. We're talking about reducing as much as possible, not SOP compliant, but reducing all the features and making them more deep, because people normally are not in VR or in any other kind of learning technology, are not able to perceive or to be overwhelmed with too many things at the same time. So that's what we learned, to make it simpler and more condensed and more deep and not too much. So that's what we learned.
And final word on the subject from you, Jennifer?
Well, I concur with everything that everyone's sharing. And from the enterprise perspective, I will say, once again, we have to have standardization and continuity with regards to not only the experience, but the data that comes back, because it's not a good use of our investment nor our time to only be able to kind of tick off and track that somebody completed something. Those days are gone, right? What we're really looking for is those really clean, nice XAPI statements coming back out of the interactions and coming back into our learning record stores. And those require standardization across the board from all experiences. So we've got to take into consideration the operational context and the ways in which to make that really clear to people from an experience standpoint, but also simultaneously the tracking and data that needs to come back into our systems, which are far beyond an LMS and all the way into learning record stores, that help us to envision whether we are actually shaping and changing behavior. So agree with everything that everyone said, and I think the closer that we can get to that, the closer we'll be to actually meaningfully being able to scale within organizations and actually demonstrate that ROI that we're all looking to see in the space.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, all three of you.